Welcome to Wadsworth History on Film, a program presented by the Wadsworth Area Historical Society and designed to record the oral history of Wadsworth. This is a special type of program we're going to have now because this is the 200th anniversary of the foundation of the City of Wadsworth. And we're presenting this program today so that in the year 2064, the people will know what we have done or what we did. Today we have two very special guests, people who made so much of what we did a reality to the outside community. The Publicity Committee, the co-chairs of the Publicity Committee, Johanna Perrino, and that's spelled P-E-R-R-I-N-O because I'm Caesar Carrino, C-A-R-R-I-N-O. We're not related, but I would have been honored if we would have been.
As would I.
We would have been honored. And we have Cathy Hall. And both people are extremely popular in Wadsworth and make, I would say, outstanding contributions to the city of Wadsworth. And we're going to be talking to them about all of the things that went on for publicity. Now, without the publicity, there would be nothing going on because no one would know anything about it. But we had a very, very successful 200th anniversary, and we need to credit both of these people for what they did. But before we do that, let's find out who Johanna is, and then we'll find out who Cathy is. And I'm sure that Cathy will be able to fill us in on us, if she has time, to fill us in on all the things that she does in Wadsworth. But Johanna, how about you starting? First and foremost, you own this place because you've been here for how many years?
It'll be 23 years in June.
You are the...
We're taping this in 2015.
2015, 2015. Yeah. And 27, how many years? 23?
I'll be here 23 years.
23 years.
I started in 1992.
Tell us what this is. I mean, this is WCTV.
WCTV, which is Wadsworth Community Television, and it's a public educational and government access studio, television studio that's owned and operated by the City of Wadsworth.
Right.
We broadcast over CityLink, which is currently the City of Wadsworth's owned cable company. And we also broadcast over Time Warner Cable. Now,
this is the first time we've been able to get those kinds of data out because Johanna knows them and no one else knows them. So that's wonderful. We had that. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where do you live and where you were born? And if you want to tell us your age, you may. If you don't want to tell us your age, you don't have to. I will tell my age because I want to be here when they open the time capsule in 2064, but I'll be 134 years old at that time. Because right to now I'm 84 years old. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Johanna.
Well, I was honored to turn 50 in the city's bicentennial year.
So
I will be
100 years old when we open the time capsule.
Correct, yes.
And from what I read just the other day, babies born now might be able to live to be 142 years of age.
Wow.
And even though some of us are not born right this year, and a person 50 years of age is not someone who would have been born this year, there's a good possibility that you would live beyond 100. So you might be seeing yourself.
Well, I hope to see you there too.
I will. Well, I plan to be there. I mean, I'll be 134 years old, but that's not too bad, is it, Cathy? No,
no,
not at all.
Not by today's standards.
Not by today's standards. Where did you go to school? And
I was born in Akron.
Born in Akron.
Near the Talmadge border, Talmadge and Akron, Chapel Hill area, kind of the east side of North Hill, if you will.
Right.
And I went to Christ the King Catholic School, grade school, and then St. Vincent St. Mary High School.
Oh.
Yes, and then I attended the University of Akron, and both of my degrees are from the University of Akron.
A baccalaureate and a master's degree.
Correct, baccalaureate, Bachelor of Arts in Communications with obviously a television production specialization, and then I went back and received my Master's of Business Administration and Marketing. And
wonderful. Now, I was at the University of Akron for 30 years. Were you there when I was there?
Yes, I was, and you were one of my teachers for some of my speech classes.
Right.
You were a guest
speaker.
Instructor, yes.
I remember that very, very well.
And you wrote my letter of recommendation for my graduate program, so I always am thankful to you for doing that.
Well, how nice. I'm glad I did that.
And you were mayor at the time.
I was mayor at the time,
Yes.
but when I was at the university, I was the dean, right?
Correct.
One of the deans. Okay. Cathy, how about you?
Well, I am not a native of Wadsworth. I was born and raised in Erie, Pennsylvania, with 4 and 5 feet of snow at all times. I went to school at the University of Edinburgh in Edinburgh, Pennsylvania. At the time that I graduated with a degree in library science and education, and that was in 1969, most every state in the country was now required to have a certified librarian on their staff. I had between 9 and 12 job offers.
I would imagine.
Yes.
Yeah. I can remember when that was a problem.
Can you?
I surely do.
All right. I had all those job offers, and after staying in Pennsylvania my entire life, I left there to come to a little place called Copley, Ohio.
Which is what, 15 miles from here?
Yes, yes. Took a job there and decided that as long as I was happy, I was going to stay there.
What job did you have there?
I was a librarian and media specialist.
In what school?
For 30 years, I was at the junior high school, the middle school, right there on the circle. And for the last 5 years, I was in an administrative position for the whole district as the director of the libraries. So I have 35 years in education. And as I said, I decided I would stay until there came a time when I was not happy. And it never happened.
Well, why did you leave then?
Well, I was old.
You were old.
I was old, Caesar.
Are you going to tell us how old you are?
I
You don't have
am.
to.
I am. I just recently began my stint with Medicare. Does that give you a hint?
65.
You got it.
So 65 and 50.
Actually, 66.
66?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, you'll probably watch yourself too 50 years from now.
Do you think so?
Oh, I think we will.
I do want to tell you something about the WCTV and my career. I was the first librarian and person in the entire state of Ohio to use young children, and they were 5th grade and 6th grade, broadcasting live the morning announcements on TV.
Oh, really?
Yes, I was the very
Wow.
first person to do that. As a result of that, I went all over the state teaching other people how to do this. And you might want to know, how did I know how to do it? Well, do
yeah.
you remember?
I do remember.
It was probably 22 years ago. I walked into this tiny little studio called WCTV in Wadsworth, Ohio.
Which was in the high school at that time.
It was.
The
and-
old high school.
Yes, I had to
was
go
the old
around to
garage.
the back door. Yes, and this young bubbly thing ran out to help me, and I was trained by Johanna Perrino.
Wow.
She taught me how to set that up and get that going.
Now, did you do the program on WCTV?
No, it was just, actually we just did it in-house.
Oh, in-house, I see.
Yes, because no one else was interested in our morning announcements. But these were 11, 12, and 13-year-old children who have gone on since, several, to become broadcasters.
No kidding.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Now, what else do you do in the community? I mean, we have only an hour, but maybe
1
you can
hour is
truncate
it? Well, when I retired after 35 years, I decided it was time for me to give back in some way. But I'm so grateful that I was smart enough to plan this ahead, so I knew what I wanted to do. I was a member of the Junior Women's Civic Club of Akron for many years, and if you don't know what that club is, it's a service organization, and I probably had the opportunity there to experience 50, 60 different types of volunteering. The nice thing about that club was you could find out immediately whether this was for you or not. I loved cooking for the Ronald McDonald House, but I did not like working at a marathon. So when I came here to Wadsworth, I decided to shift all my volunteering to Wadsworth area where I now had lived. I do a lot of work with my church, which is First Christian Church here. I've done a lot with the Salvation Army. Actually started the Salvation Army Women's Auxiliary.
That's what I wanted you to talk about.
Yes, yes.
Started the Women's Auxiliary with 3 or 4 people, and
Yes.
within
And what happened that night?
and how many people did you have within a week or two?
Well, you're right. There were 3 or 4 people. We were having an installation at Trinity Church, and it was raining out, and I was standing at the main door greeting people, and at the time it was Captain Grace was standing at the front door greeting people also as they came in, Oh,
Captain
now.
Debbie Grace.
Yes,
But her husband was Captain Tom Grace.
Yes, and he was there as well, though,
Yeah.
for that occasion. So I'm looking at my watch. It's time to start. We've got 10 people. Looking at my watch, I said, we've got to get started. Well, there's people trying to find parking spots. That night we had 96.
96 people.
Yes. Yes.
It's over 100 now.
Yes, it is.
And Major Grace
Yes.
and Major Tom and Major Debbie Grace are so grateful for that, and everyone else is too. Now, you know, if we would go all the way through Cathy's volunteering, it would take the entire hour. So
We could schedule another show.
well, we can do that, right? But right now we want to talk about how did you work this thing with advertising? Now, typically when we say about advertising, we get someone to put something in the paper or something like that. But we had some of the most stupendous advertising that that Wadsworth has ever seen. Johanna, how about telling us just how you started to put this thing together, and you and Cathy?
Well, the mayor approached me in 2011 and asked if I would oversee this committee.
That would be Mayor Lawbaugh.
Correct, Mayor
Because
Robin
actually
Lawbaugh.
you work for the city.
I do, yes.
Right.
The WCTV is a department of the City of Wadsworth.
Right.
So, of course, I accepted, and then they sought out people to serve on the committees. And there were a few that volunteered to serve on the publicity committee, but Cathy was my only one that stuck. And it's hard for a publicity committee because really it's just a lot of writing. It's a lot of writing press releases, writing flyers, designing ads. So it wasn't a hard thing for me to do most of the writing myself. Being at WCTV and working in publicity and outreach and working with nonprofits, and it was just a natural fit for me to do that, the press releases and things like that.
Luckily for Wadsworth, it was a natural fit. Because
Well, and lucky for me that I have directed a majority of your Wadsworth History on film shows, and I know a lot about Wadsworth history because of you. Not being a Wadsworth native, but being here for over 20 years.
20 years now.
I feel like I do know a lot about Wadsworth history, and that's because of you.
Although embarrassing, we need to identify what the Wadsworth history is that you're talking about.
Wadsworth History on Film is this series that we're on today. You've done over 350 one-hour programs in that series that you've produced.
In other words, I actually interviewed the residents of Wadsworth, citizens of Wadsworth,
Right.
Many of whom are now dead.
Correct. When you started, they were the 190-year-olds.
Right.
And then you kind of worked your way down with the younger people, but now you're just doing as they come.
As they come.
Yes.
We
people
had
of interest.
we interviewed the 100-year-olds right off the bat, and then the 90 years old because we didn't think that they would live too terribly
Right.
long. And
Some
they
we
didn't.
had to go on location.
Of the 350 or so that we have done, approximately 100 are dead. And when we got to the 70-year-olds, we thought, well, we're going to have to wait for a little while for another batch of old people to come up from the ranks, and that's exactly what we did. So from time to time, we keep on doing that.
Now, we do have a wonderful database of all those programs, and there's a copy of each show at the Wadsworth Library. So anyone that would like to view them can go to the library and watch them, or they can also call us for copies or watch them on Peg Central, which is probably something else.
Tell us what Peg Central is.
Peg Central is our online site where all of our programming is hosted.
And it's
my dot Peg Central.
Peg, what does it stand for?
Public Educational Government.
Public Education Government Central.com. And Peg Central is one word?
Correct. It's all one word. My .pegcentral.com.
.com. Okay, got it.
And when you pull up that screen, there's a drop-down menu, and it has all of our programming, all of our series, all the school programs, all the public meetings. So you can watch at this time. In 2015, you can watch it on your computer, your iPad, your smartphone.
Or whatever else they'll have
yes.
in 2018.
You may be able to watch it in your eyeglasses, you know, when they're watching this show 20 years from now. Who knows?
And that's a far cry from the 3x5 cars that we started with in our day, in the beginning of teaching. Now, Johanna, I see here on a piece of paper the 2014 Wadsworth Bicentennial Publicity Chair Activities. And I counted 29 different things that you had to do throughout the year. Now, that doesn't seem like too terribly much unless you start thinking to yourself, probably each one of these took a week or so to design. Is that correct?
Well, and a lot of them were ongoing. I did at least a monthly press release. We did many, many flyers.
Show up one of the flyers.
Yeah, John's going to put up a couple of these, but here's the flyers. And we worked very closely with Jim Cordes from Oz2 Designs. Right. He worked on the artwork and really branding these flyers so that when people saw anything that was in their utility bill, in the newspaper, on Facebook, on the website, on press releases, anywhere they saw anything, it had this brand, it had this specific color, the logo, and he did such an excellent job. I couldn't have done this without him. He set up all the artwork. I supplied the content for the flyers, but he laid out all the design, came up with the logo. And I know he wasn't a guest on your show when you interviewed Jack from Oz2 Design. So I really want to give a huge, huge thank you to Jim Cordes from Oz2.
We wanted Jim to come on,
yes,
on the show, but he wouldn't do it. Now, you forgot one medium.
Okay.
Cathy Hall. She talks to everybody.
Yes.
And everyone knew exactly what was going on because Cathy would fill them in.
Well, now, when we started in 2011, Cathy started doing some research and coming up with a database that we could send to all the churches, the school people, the volunteers in the community, the newspapers, the radio stations. So she came up with a database, and then we got a database from the mayor who she sends her things to. I have one here, and we combined all those and really came up with a very, very efficient database to send out our messages to.
I think the only people who did not get some of your ads or the benefit of your work were the Russians or someone who lived in another country, because everyone knew exactly what was going on.
Well, and
that's
a lot
so
of
important.
A lot of it was through electronic media, but Cathy's very involved in the Wadsworth Senior Center, the Suprema Senior Center. So she was really instrumental in spreading the word to that population that maybe doesn't have access to the internet and things like that. So,
Cathy, talk about this match that we have back here, because there's something about the match which is significant, which may not be in anyone's vocabulary in 2064, but we certainly remember it because
Yes.
we had the match company right here in Wadsworth,
Yes.
the Blue Tip match. Tell us why we have the match in the background.
The match has, going along with it, a match box, and I do believe our person in the control room has that, so you can put on the screen. We have a match box and a match, and both were part of a display in the city of Medina on the square. And there Joanna and I are. After we put this display up, that is the Medina County Department of Tourism. They change that display every month, and usually they invite people to come and put up a display. That whole window was Wadsworth, and Joanna and I went in and put that together. We put it together in about 10 minutes, didn't we?
we did, but you did the entire design. I just helped with a little manpower.
Well, the hardest part was finding the base for the giant match. And made the match, and these smaller matches that went with the match box, of course, and that seemed to be the biggest attraction there in the city of Medina. That's what people saw when they went around that square. And then, of course, they asked questions. And then, of course, if they went inside, I had Joanna's beautiful flyers and handouts there for them. And this was also on display then later on at City Hall for a while.
We need to talk just a little bit about the match company. It actually started about 1895 here, and at one time was supposedly the largest match company in the world. I'm not sure if that's true or not, But in the mid-50s, it started to decline, and we no longer have the match company here. But about 43 or 44 years ago, we started the Blue Tip Festival based upon the match, the Blue Tip match, and that's the reason the top of that match is blue. We had the Blue Tip, what they call the Big Stick. That was the larger matches. And then we had book matches also, and we also had the wee-wees, which were small boxes of matches. And the wee-wees were not only blue, but also red. And, excuse me, but the Blue Tip match is the one which was the progenitor of the, rather the reason we call the festival the Blue Tip Festival. And that's been going on for 42 or 43 years now, I think. 42, 43. Is that right, Johanna?
I don't know.
I think it's 43 years
now.
And whether it will be here in 2064 or not, we don't know. But it's an extremely important thing, and that's why the match is so particularly valuable as a symbol of Wadsworth.
Yes, very recognizable.
Very recognizable.
Yes, anyone from Wadsworth knew what we were talking about.
That's right, exactly. But in 2064, that may not be the case.
True.
Now, Johanna, one of the things that you're an expert in doing, and I wish I had this much of the expertise that you have in it, but you can do so much with the computer. Now, I would imagine in 2064, they're going to look back and say that the computer was something akin to what I would have considered my 3x5 cards, and I still use them. And by the way, no one can hack my 3x5 cards because they're in my desk drawer. And tell us about what you were able to do with the computer and how. I mean, I heard you say something a little while ago about the fact that you could take that computer and do it worldwide, and you can have a database and all those other kinds. But tell us what you did with the computer.
Well, what was really important for this bicentennial is not only reaching people in Wadsworth, but reaching people everywhere.
And why?
So that they could come back and celebrate this year.
That's right. We have people all over the world who lived in Wadsworth at one time.
Yes.
And did we get any responses from people from other countries and other states and so forth?
We did have one response from someone, and I can't remember the country. Do you remember?
No, I don't.
It was an Asian country, I believe. I want to say it was China, or, but I can't remember, so I won't comment on it. But yes, that they responded, and they actually wanted us to send them some bicentennial merchandise.
Wow.
T-shirts, things like that.
The person was from Wadsworth.
Yeah, correct, yes.
Now, we had a lot of people from the various states.
We had a lot of people, and we had so many people sharing their memories on our website. Now, we started early again with that in 2011. We set up the website as a part of the City of Wadsworth's website, and I worked with our IT department and Sabre Logic in setting that up so we could have the schedule of events, all the information we just wanted to direct everybody to that page for information, schedule of events, history. We created a historical timeline that the students in the Wadsworth High School History Department entered content so that we had a timeline for the 200 years that...
Starting in 1814.
Starting in 1814, yes.
Now, you said the word IT. There's a possibility that in 2064 they will know what IT means, but why don't we say
information technology.
Information technology,
yes.
right?
Yes.
Even I knew that.
And that was also a city department currently. That's a city department.
City department in Wadsworth, right?
Yes.
Kathy, one of the things that always comes to mind when I think about what you do is your, and I hope I say this right, your absolute unending energy, and the part that I'm going to say that I don't mean in a negative way, despite your age. Despite your age. What kinds of things were you able to do on a personal basis as you walked around the community and went through all of the places where you volunteer and things like that? What were you able to do? I know that you could say, well, now we're going to have such and such an event on such and such a day. But knowing you didn't stop there.
No.
you probably grabbed their collar and said, "You're going to go."
Indeed. There were really two areas that I had a lot of fun working with. One, of course, was the seniors that Johanna has mentioned, but another one I'll mention very briefly was a Boy Scout troop. And this was a Boy
Well, now, don't tell me that you belong to the Boy Scouts also.
No, I don't. Maybe honorary.
Well,
This was Boy Scout Troop 401 of Grace Lutheran Church. Chris Perrino, who is a friend of mine, is the Scoutmaster.
Let's spell that name, please.
Cerino.
And Chris is the girl.
No,
Chris is the-
this is a male. He is the Scoutmaster.
Okay, Chris Sereno's the Scoutmaster. Okay.
Well, Johanna had approached me with a box of, maybe it was a half a ream of paper. Remember all those flyers that go? I think it was this flyer that needed distributed on the north end of town. So I'm thinking, this is the opportunity. Get those scouts out there to deliver these to businesses and so on. And indeed they did. They were great. They enjoyed it. I gave them a brief list. Actually, more than anything, I gave them a geographical area where I would like things delivered, whether it be a beauty shop, a pizza shop, the grocery store, a gas station, and they did so. So that was one way of involving them. Then came the senior citizens. I do serve on the board at the Foundation for Older Adults here, and I knew that we would have a missing link if we did not pull them in somehow to our activities. Now, despite Johanna's total coverage of the media, social media, and so on, my mind is saying they don't all do that. They don't all do that. I've got to get to their level of technology, which might be none. So I had 2 or 3 activities planned for the seniors. I bombed on one of them. They just were not interested. And it was one that took place outside of their comfort zone. Actually, it was at the picnic where you were. So I learned something right then and there, how to handle them and how to best serve them and design things for them. I had an apple baking pie contest. Those pies were served and judged at St. Mark's Church.
Had some. Very good.
You did, good. Also a craft workshop. This was very interesting because at the picnic, the children were gathered together and they were making windsocks. Some people call them whirligigs, but it was sort of a complicated little thing that you wave around and so on. But there were 2 or 3 steps at the beginning that were a little too much for these 3- and 4-year-olds. So I stepped in. I was very lucky. My friend was directing that workshop, and that's Linda Parmalee. So I was very lucky that Linda let me neb in. There's another way, you know, we just in conversation, I said, why don't you let me get the seniors to do those first 2 steps? I set up a workshop area for them. I expected 4 or 5 people, and we were doing, I think, 250 of them, prepping them for the children to work on. And 30 people showed up.
30 people?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And they had a great time doing it. Great time. One of the other things that I did that they were not interested in, and looking back now I understand why, was the time capsule. I asked them if they were allowed to leave something in the time capsule, what would it be? I don't know if they were thinking in terms of, I won't be here anyhow, but I did not get the response I would like to have had from them.
That's surprising. That's really surprising
Yes.
because, you know, you didn't ask me. However, I can think of 10 things that I would like to have in the time capsule.
I'm certain. And the big difference with the seniors, unlike Johanna's ability to contact hundreds and thousands of people through media, through social media, through the computer and so on, I had to be one-on-one.
That's right.
Again, because they don't do that.
No, they don't.
No. So
Now, I'm positive in 2014, the kids who are growing up, who will at that time be maybe 50 or 60, 70 years old, will have had the opportunity, but I did not have an opportunity. As a matter of fact, the computer wasn't invented when I was around.
Exactly.
And even though it was invented during my lifetime. I was much too old to become involved
Sure.
with it.
Sure.
But this generation will be involved, but there might be something at that time in 2014, I think, or 2064, you said it's like seeing it through their glasses or whatever, that will be so far out that these kids who are now computer literate may not
Yes.
be even interested
Yes.
in that.
My
So-
little Boy Scouts,
Right.
for example, yes. And it's
Exactly.
not that the seniors are not capable of using the computers and so on. They don't need to. You know, I was forced into it in my job. A lot of us were. The young people today are doing it for fun.
Oh,
And
they,
it transitions into work for them. How lucky are they? But the senior citizens had no reason.
no.
No reason.
No. You know, that's an interesting concept that even though we had all of this, what would you call that, mass media, so forth, still it's extremely important to get individuals involved. And we did get the older
Yes.
people involved. Many older people were there. Joanna, you know, one of the things that I think of when I look at this comprehensive list of everything that you did, and I can't even count them because each paragraph, you have about 15 paragraphs here, and each one has about 15 different things. So if you take 15 times 15, I think that comes up to about 625 different things that you did. I think that's right, the math, right? The math is right on that. But you did this in addition to having a full-time job.
Correct, yes.
Oh, she says correct.
It was easy for her.
Well, like
How
I
did
said,
you find the
it was a
time?
natural fit because I do a lot of this work already with WCTV. So a lot of the programming and the commercials and the, you know, laying out the press releases and the flyers, and that's work that I already am familiar with. It wasn't like I had to learn a new skill.
And then
So-
you didn't have to learn a new skill, but it still takes time to do it.
It does take time, but I, like everyone else on this whole bicentennial year committee, hundreds of people, you know, we all put in time to make it special, to
How
make
many
it
volunteers
fantastic.
do you think we had altogether?
Oh gosh, do you know?
Couple
We probably
hundred.
had,
Couple hundred?
yeah, but we had eight executive committees and two chairs on each one. So,
close to
yeah, we
20.
I'm
probably
going to-
had 20 on the executive committee and then hundreds of volunteers that, you know, volunteered on certain events or,
I'm going to be interviewing the volunteer chair,
Patty Haskins.
Patty Haskins, and she probably will have the exact number.
Yes, she
But
will.
in the meantime, I bet it's more than 200.
I do too,
Oh,
because you know what? I don't think Patty Haskins knows about my 22 Boy Scouts,
No.
and they were volunteers.
And how many senior citizens do you think you might have had?
Well, I had close to 30 at that one event. You
So
know, maybe
there's-
I had 100 with those couple of events that I personally worked on.
Yeah, I mean, people may have just done one event or one task, but when you
They were
count
volunteers.
every
That's right.
throughout
It was
that whole year, it
loads,
was
and
definitely
the
hundreds.
hours.
First night was probably 100, don't you think?
Yes, yes.
Just
then-
just
then-
for first night.
Then we had so many of the high school students who were, what did they do? The high school students, when they had the long dresses on, the girls.
Oh, they dressed up as the characters.
Characters.
At
Characters.
first night,
And
yes.
then we had the dance thing, and they were all volunteers, and there must have been hundreds of those people.
Yes.
So we might even go up to 1,000 volunteers.
It would be very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine there are not too many people that live in Wadsworth that did not do something.
You're probably right.
That did
You're
not do
probably
something.
right.
Now, we had some high school students help with, we did all the television coverage for all of these events that went on throughout the year. So WCTV was responsible for coordinating all the coverage so that every memory was captured on video. So we did utilize some high school students from the media communications class. And then I cannot thank Bob Parmalee and Tom Stugmeyer enough for helping to cover. They really
They did a beautiful
came
job.
through.
They did.
Yes, they covered, because we're a small staff here. We only have 3 people, so it was impossible for us to cover
there's no way.
everything. And
I interviewed Bob Parmalee and Tom Stugmeyer, so there'll be an hour of that.
yes, they
for
did a
the
fantastic
time capsule.
job.
Everything we're doing in terms of these kinds of programs today and the ones the past week or two and the next 2 or 3 weeks, all of them are going to be in the time capsule. And my understanding is that we can put everything that you've done for an entire year on a flash drive. So I just hope that they have something
Now,
that they can.
we'll also be putting a device in there that they can open up the flash drive.
The flash drive.
So if we put DVDs in there, we'll also put a DVD player. If we put a flash drive in there, we may do both. We'll also put something that they can open the flash drive.
They can open the flash drive because it may not be there.
Correct.
And,
It'd
pardon
be
me.
like an 8-track.
8-track, and I'm sure that, let's tell us what an 8-track was.
What's an 8-track?
Right,
It was in the, what, 70s?
70s.
When I
Yes.
was very little. In the 70s, it was like a cassette, like a cart, an old radio cart. Do you remember those? That would play. It was pre-audio cassettes.
But why do we call them 8-tracks?
I don't know.
Well, I guess it had something to do with the fact that there were 8
Must have had 8 tracks on it.
tracks on it. That's
It
true.
was big and cumbersome.
It was big.
One of the questions that always comes up when we advertise, did we have anybody doing any, for the want of a better word, advertising for money, or did all of the advertising come from us free of charge?
Well, I put together a budget, and Cathy and I worked together on that at the beginning of the year. So every committee had to come
Right.
up with a budget. So we weren't just spending haphazardly. So we came up with a budget that included newspaper, printing, radio, TV. Of course, all of our TV was through
Free.
WCTV, so that was free. The Strand Marquee, they were fantastic
They
with promoting all of our events.
and free of
A
charge.
lot of it was free of charge, yes. A very small amount did we pay them, so but they continued to publicize
What
our
about
events.
newspapers?
Newspaper, we did negotiate a contract, a year-long contract with the Post newspaper, and they did a fantastic job, as well as also allowing some editorial, like your columns, historical columns.
We didn't have to pay for that, did we?
We did not. We only paid for the advertising, and then they supported all the bicentennial events with their coverage, and then allowing some other extra columns like yours.
As a matter of fact, Emily,
Emily Kanan, Dean Caning.
Dean Koenig, right, was on absolutely everything. I mean, that camera crew.
I don't
was
know
right.
how she must have twins or triplets, because she's at everything.
Absolutely, there's no question about that. And the thing that surprised me about Emily was that she came to the very, very last thing, which was the Christmas Carol sing-along, and she didn't have a coat, and it was cold.
Yes, it was.
And she seemed to be as comfortable as anyone could possibly have been. It was just, but she was everywhere.
Wonderful,
Everywhere.
yes.
I mean, you could not go to any event without Emily being there, and I think that I have no idea how old Emily is, but if she sees this in 2064, Emily, thank you very much. Without you, we would not have had nearly so much coverage as we did.
And one of the other things we utilized highly was that the City of Wadsworth sends out utility bills.
Right.
So we were able to put a bill insert, a flyer insert in the utility bills.
And that goes to 11,000 people.
So it went
Yes.
to everyone in Wadsworth, as well as people,
There are a few
some in the
surrounding
outskirts.
communities, right?
Yes,
I think that the ratio or the formula is that the Public Utilities Commission permits about 40 or 50% beyond the confines of Wadsworth to receive Wadsworth electricity.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So a little bit of Sharon Township, a little bit of Guilford Township, a little bit of maybe Milton Township, I'm not really positive.
And we also
receive.
utilized the Medina County Events online site. Auditor Michael Kovac does a Friday newsletter or e-newsletter blast. So that went to everyone in the county.
That's right.
So we really wanted to bring people to Wadsworth, not just Wadsworth people. We know we're going to celebrate, but we wanted to bring people that were outside the county
Now
to see our city.
The Blue Tip Festival brought in 30,000 people this year. Usually it's about 25,000, but the reason we say that it's 30,000 is that it's 2 miles long, and after it gets past the square, it usually kind of fizzles out. The number of people fizzles out, but it didn't fizzle out this year. We had crowds all the way down to the very end, which was at Isham School. So 30,000 people knew what we were going to be doing because we had floats in there. Now, who was were you involved with the publicity to have floats, or did that come from another committee?
To have the floats entered into the parade, that's actually the Blue Tip Parade Committee.
That's the Blue Tip Parade
Correct.
Committee.
Yes.
And they did a phenomenal job. The floats were just beautiful.
Now, I did include that in all my publicity, the Blue Tip Festival and the Blue Tip Parade, and that this was a special year for it, and so in that way, but the Blue Tip Committee was in charge of the entries.
Cathy, I can't believe how much you have stored up in this head up here. You talk about being a librarian. Your
Yes.
library is right up there. Tell us what your thoughts were as you walked around the community, and not necessarily your thoughts, but what kinds of things did you see that all of a sudden sparked an interest in doing something better or beyond that, as you typically do? I mean, you see a problem, and all of a sudden you see a solution. Did you see any problems that you were able to correct as far as, you mentioned one a little while ago. You said, we have senior citizens who do not know how to use a computer. So you went after it and you did it one-on-one.
Right.
What else did you do similar to that one?
You know, Caesar, I wouldn't say that I see a problem, but maybe I see a need, or some.
That's a nicer way of saying it.
And yes, so, or something that maybe we can expand on. You know, I can't think anything off the top of my head.
Well,
It was so thoroughly covered. And this is a good time for me to thank Johanna. You would not believe the things that are inside her head and how she can pull into a group and know exactly who to contact. And she worked weeks and weeks and weeks on our publicity, on who is going to get what, where we are going to advertise. And that was vital.
Well,
That was vital.
I was going to go into her head in a couple of seconds here, but when we opened the time capsule, the one that was in 50 years before this,
Yes.
which would have been
64.
1964. Yeah, that's
Yes.
right, 1964. As I remember, and you may not remember this because you were doing a million things. I was on the stage, or I guess they had a flatbed truck there.
Yes,
And I was
downtown.
Downtown. And there were some people who were very old. I shouldn't say that because I'm very old, and I would not have put myself into that category, but they were much more helpless, let's just say. I personally saw you down there and found a seat for them.
I saw you that night, and I wondered if you had seen me.
I saw you. Now that's the kind of thing that is the best publicity that you can do, to take a person who needs something and then you took care of it right then and there.
Well, thank you for saying that.
I remember that. I remember that.
Thank you.
Joanne, let's go into your head for a couple of seconds. You have a degree in mass marketing, or rather
Correct.
in communication and mass marketing. How do you conceptualize these things in your head? I mean, do you see, well, the book says this, or does it come out as a feeling of spontaneity?
Well, I mean, working here for so long, it was just like doing my regular job, really. We worked so hard on the database, and we really felt like we covered all areas. So really, it's just writing the press release and getting it out to everybody on our list. Because we felt like through our list, through our database of the media and the churches and the volunteers and the businesses and the magazines and radio and TV, that we covered as much as we got to as many people as we could.
Well, I guess
and through Facebook. Facebook was instrumental.
Tell us what Facebook is, if in the event in 2064 they don't have Facebook. What is it?
Facebook is a social networking, social media website that you can interact with friends in quotes, people that you allow to be on your page. Now with a page such as the Wadsworth Bicentennial, it's a public page, so anyone can visit it, anyone can see any of the things that we post each day, pictures from the events, updates on the schedule. We encouraged people to leave their memories of Wadsworth.
Did they?
And they did. And that was great because people, anyone who likes the page, and anytime something is posted on that page, they kind of get an alert or a notification on their Facebook page. Now I know you don't do Facebook, do you?
No, I don't
Okay.
do Facebook.
So they get an alert on their Facebook page, and they'll see what we've posted. So if there, like I said, if there was a schedule change, or we did a trivia contest to try and build viewers to the page. So that, and then when people posted their memories or their thoughts on something that was coming up, or then it encouraged a discussion on other people that were friends of that page. So the nice part is, though, is that this is forever in history. This Facebook page is forever electronically in history.
It's always there.
It's
then.
always going to be there. And so people can go back and look through it, look at the pictures, look at the posts, look at the memories.
Now, you said the word like in quotation.
Yeah.
How about telling us what likes meant?
Like is when you go to a page on Facebook, like maybe someone would go to our WCTV page. They would like it. There's just an icon that they press. They like it. So when they like a page, that means they're interested in anything that's happening on that page.
Okay.
So they will receive a notification. It would just be like if years ago, if you liked the O'Neill Company or Macy's, or you had a credit card, you would get stuff in the mail because you are interested in that particular business. Kind of the same, I guess, a little bit the same thing, where you express an interest in that group, that person, that business, and then so you will receive future posts or status updates
Okay.
on that.
That's what
particular.
likes means.
Does that make sense?
Well, yes, it does.
Did you get all that,
Does that make
Caesar? It does make sense.
No, it
People
does-
that
it
use
does.
Facebook,
It does,
it'll
it
make
does make
sense.
sense.
Okay.
It does make, you know, there are so many more things that we need to talk about here, but we'll have to go a little bit faster, I guess, because we're running out of time. One of the things that you mentioned here not too terribly long ago, Johanna, piqued my interest. You said that you had a budget.
Yes.
Would it be appropriate for you to say approximately how much the budget? It doesn't have to be
Sure.
perfect, but
Yes, it was when we looked through everything, and because of all the things that we were able to get for free, we had a $10,000 budget.
and did you stay within that budget?
We did. Yes. We
Now-
were well below, actually.
Actually, I understand that the entire episode that we went through for 1 year was $25,000 under budget.
Correct. They did a
So-
phenomenal job of fundraising.
Fundraising, we had
Yes.
the fundraisers here as well. Here we interviewed the fundraisers. One of the things that the people in 2064 can be grateful to you people is that all they have to do is put ditto marks under what you've done, and they don't have to do anything except maybe just sit back and watch the thing roll out. Same thing with so many of the other ones. But the one thing that we would like to encourage the people in 2064 to do before they start is to have a budget, and then to find out how much money they're going to need, and in addition to that, to make sure that there is a substantial amount of documentation for that budget. Now tell us how you built your budget.
Well, we researched where our money would be best spent, what types of media, and researched what things we could use that were already in place, like WCTV, like the utility bill inserts. Jim Cordes did all his design work for for free. Really, our major expenses were the post advertising, printing, and we did a little bit of radio commercials. What else?
I'd say the post was the most expensive.
The post was the majority, and
We
the
spent a lot of
printing.
time on that.
How much printing did we have to get done, and who did our printing for us?
RBA did our printing, Bob Balt,
Bob Balt.
correct. And,
And so we know where he was or is today, but in 2064, that building may not be here.
he was on College, he's on College
Cottage
Street.
Street, approximately a mile west of the square on the south
Yes.
side of the road.
Yes.
Correct,
Big building.
correct.
And it's just before the housing allotments that are down there. And Bob is Bob Balt, B-A-U-L-T,
Correct.
Wadsworth person for years and years and years. And I'm sure that he gives a very good price.
He did, and like I said, we spent a minimal amount with the Strand, and they gave us such valuable exposure on that marquee that's in the center of town.
Right now, the Strand was redesigned. It was a movie theater for many, many years, and then it went into disuse. But someone bought it, and they made an office building out of it with a little bit of a what would you call it? A party center.
Yeah,
Similar.
yeah,
Maybe
a party room.
75 to 100 people. And then they have a marquee. The marquee, they actually brought the marquee back.
Yes.
And they have advertising on the marquee. As a matter of fact, when I turned 70, which was 14 years ago, somebody, and I have no idea yet, put on there that I was 70 years of age. Well,
And now it's owned by Terry and Kevin Sir Lewis. So
Right.
Currently the Strand. We also did posters. We did the bill inserts. We did postcards that we handed out at the Blue Tip Parade. That's just some of the
yes,
printing
loads
we
of those.
did. We also had very large banners that we hung over the street. So
and
we
the
had
city does that.
the city hangs them for us. We did have to have those printed.
But now you had those people who were passing out the postcards. How many people did you have?
Cathy, you
I
coordinate
was-
that.
There's more volunteers.
I was
I
gonna-
would have no idea.
You took the words out of my mouth. There are some volunteers that probably are not even
That's right.
identified as volunteers.
That's right.
But I bet you
Exactly.
had 50 to 60
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
easily. It's kids and
All, everything.
anyone who could walk.
Yes. And not always walk. Maybe someone wanted to sit in a chair and pass
And
things
pass them out, right.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the kinds of things that I'm hoping that the people in 2064 will understand, that it doesn't necessarily have to be a volunteer who has the badge, I'm a volunteer. I mean, just pick up anybody and let them do it.
That's right.
And people will be willing to do it. How
They
did you
want
get
to be asked.
Yeah, they want to be asked. How did you get those people to do that for the parade?
Usually, Caesar, it was simply asking.
And whom did you ask right off the bat? Was it kids or groups? Or
It
what?
was more adults right off the bat, but then sometimes that spreads to children or,
Right.
gee, can I bring my kids with me?
You bet.
Please do.
Yeah.
Bring your grandchildren.
As many as you have.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
one other major thing that Cathy was wonderful with is promoting the Bicentennial merchandise. And she set up tables, especially with the seniors.
I'd like to tell about that.
Yeah.
Well,
I know
tell
we're
us.
talking about the same event.
Yes.
Joanna had in her office a box of the books.
We were a point of purchase
Tell
for
us what books, though. Tell us what books.
Bicentennial merchandise.
Tell us about the books.
The book was the coffee table book, Wadsworth, the first
And who did
200
that?
years. Jack Ollum, Roger Havens, Jim Cordis. Yes.
Hardback book, beautiful. And Joanna said, she made some snide remark really to me about a book signing. I said, a book signing? Well, we definitely will have that. So I set up a book signing in the senior center with the mayor. I was there probably an hour before it was to begin. It was just a normal day. And she was not there yet. She was not expected to be there yet. I turn around, there's about 20 people in line. Now, the book was not cheap. It was $29.
I thought it was even more than
There
that.
it is, $29.99.
Yes.
Yes.
There's the book. It was $29, and I thought, oh my goodness. And we ended up selling more books that day because, of course, Robin is so personable.
Oh,
And
she's
she
a
talked
delight.
to everyone, and then people wanted photo ops with her. She signed books, she personalized them, she wrote them little messages and sat there and talked to them, and then she signed the books that they bought for Christmas gifts. That was a great morning.
Anytime that you have Robin Lawbaugh out doing something for you, you can be assured that she would do it to the very, very best.
Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely.
She's excellent.
Yeah.
We have a couple more minutes, and one of the things that I typically do at the end of all of the interviews here is to have your own personal thoughts about this. Cathy, I know that we don't have to even urge you to give your personal thoughts, but I'm going to ask you at this time to give your personal thoughts about the whole thing, your feelings about what you did, and feelings about what happened when it was all over with.
First of all, Caesar, it was the longest committee I have ever served on.
Oh, really?
Yes. Well, when it
Well, 3 years.
when it's 3 years, when it's 3
Probably
years.
the smallest committee
Oh,
and
this
the
committee.
longest.
Well, when it's 3 years old, you know, when we were working on this for 3 years,
That's right.
it was one of the longest. Of course, this publicity, if it was just the two of us, is pretty small. However, the executive meetings and so on, one of the largest. My first impression and lasting impression was the very first meeting that we had, and we had it in council chambers.
Right,
The room was packed.
right.
Everyone's yak, 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 yak. And it was pretty loud in that room. And Mayor walked in. She did not have one note in her hand.
Nope,
She did not use a microphone.
nope.
She stood in front of us and spoke in total silence for about an hour. It was a fun committee. I enjoyed the diversity of it. I enjoyed the diversity of the whole celebration. Would I do it again? Are you going to do it again?
Sure, we'll do it together.
You can be assured they're going to call on you to do it again in 2064.
Really?
So be there.
And I hope you're there with us.
I do too.
Well,
Johanna,
I hope I have the same committee member because Cathy was a pleasure to work with, and I
Right.
think we really worked well together and complemented each other's skills and talents. So I appreciate everything that she's done, and I just appreciate being a part of it. I'm not a Wadsworth native, but I feel like I am after all these years being here and working on this committee, and it was a pleasure to watch Wadsworth celebrate this.
I would say that you probably deserve to be an honorary member of Wadsworth for all the things that you did, and we are most appreciative.
Well,
and
very
you
soon
will be here
very
for
soon I will be.
2064, and I hope that they pick you up.
Thank you.
We've come to the end of our hour. Thank you very, very much, and thank you for all that you did to make the Bicentennial such a success.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much,
Caesar.
Caesar.
My pleasure.